All right, it's finals time. Let's review solving quadratic equations of many different types. In our first problem, we only have two terms. We have our x squared term and we have a numerical term. If your problem simply says solve, awesome, you're in luck. We would do it like this. We would isolate the x on one side and then solve. So our first step would be to subtract 500 from both sides. Our next step would be to divide both sides by -20. And our final step would be to take the square root of both sides. Now, here's the important moment. When you take the square root of both sides, on this side, you get a plus and a minus. All right, now I have a quadratic. My leading term has a coefficient greater than 1, so I know I can always use the quadratic formula to get directly to my solutions. If you don't remember how to do this, take a look at this video. But again, let's say my problem didn't just say solve. Let's say it said factor, then solve. So let's remind ourselves of the X method. If this is your first time seeing this, you might want to go check out this video first, but otherwise, I know that what goes up here is my A times my C, and what goes down here is my B. And now I'm asking myself what multiplies to -12 and adds to -1. So I'm going to make a quick factor list. And I can see that my 3 and my 4 are the ones that are 1 apart. And now I ask myself, well, which one has to be negative in order for it to turn out being -1 when I add them? Well, that would be the larger one. Great. Now, because I had a coefficient here, these are not what go in my parentheses. I need to finish up with factoring by grouping. So that goes like this. I bring down my first term and my last term, and these are the coefficients of my inner and my outer. If that is a foreign language to you, go check out this video on foiling or this video on factoring by grouping. While you're at it, go through the whole factoring playlist. It's all there. But let's continue here. I'm going to factor by grouping. So I'm going to throw parentheses around that. Remember, if there's a negative here, it wants to get included in the parentheses, and I'm going to want to factor it out. So I look for my greatest common factor here. That's a 3x. I look for my greatest common factor here. That's a -2. Take a note of how when I factor that -2 out, right, it changes the sign of each of these, because dividing a negative by a negative leaves me with a positive. And yay, hallelujah, those are the same thing. So final step, I factored those out, and I'm left with, and of course that had equals 0 all the way along. And so now I go ahead and apply my rule of 0, which tells me that for this times this to equal 0, that happens when 2x plus 1 equals 0 or 3x minus 2 equals 0. So I go ahead and solve with my algebra. I'm going to subtract 1. I'm going to divide by 2. I'm going to add 2. I'm going to divide by 3. And now I have factored and solved my quadratic. Last one. All right, that looks simple, fabulous. Let's throw it in the X. I need what multiplies to -3 and adds to -7. And at this point, you should be doing the Scooby-Doo row, because if I do my factors of 3, that's really all I've got, and that is not happening. Now, my friends, it is time to employ our quadratic formula. Here we go. All right, -b, -7, that's a 7, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. And now I start simplifying things. So 4 times 1 is 4 times -3 is -12 minus a minus is plus 12. 2 times 1 is 2. 49 plus 12 is 61. 61 is a prime number. 7 is not divisible by 2. None of this goes any further. These are my answers. Now, if it said factor as well, then you would just throw these answers into some parentheses. So it would look like this. So my two solutions are 7 plus root 61 over 2 and 7 minus root 61 over 2. And don't forget that when you put them into your factors, your answers are subtracted from your x, right? X minus something, x minus something. So those are your factors if these are your answers. All right, That's three different methods for three different types of quadratics, both factoring and solving. Go ahead and check out my factor playlist to get a lot more practice with this. Consider subscribing to my channel so you know when I put out a new video. And as always, keep on mathing.